to SpockCast. This is episode 57. My name is Tim Mitchell, and I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined once again by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
Hello there.
We also have Jaime Lopez Jr. on the line in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
All righty. So we'll just start off with some fact check. We were mentioning, I'm not sure if I ended up putting this in the show or not, but you were talking about, we're trying to explain to Jaime how close or not close we live together, Jonathan and I, how far my house is to Jonathan's house in Mississauga, and it turns, I said roughly 40 or 50 kilometers. It actually turns out to be 36 kilometers apart that we live.
Practically neighbors.
Whereas I think somebody put in here 22.36 miles. It wasn't me.
That was me, because 36 kilometers, that might as well be the distance to the moon for all I know.
Yeah.
So I had to go into Google and see.
You know, they do measure the distance to the moon in meters. I just want to, point that out,
Yeah, and I don't know what that is either.
280,000.
It's an astronomical unit, and I don't know how many that is.
Yeah, I think roughly it comes to mind 280,000 kilometers to the moon.
I believe you, but 22.369 miles.
Hey Siri, how far is it from the Earth to the moon?
Yeah, sure. Now she's not listening.
The distance from Earth to the moon at 9:49 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Thursday, February 27th, 2020, is about 405,042 kilometers.
What do you know?
That
I'm completely wrong.
Was like a Lieutenant Commander Data unnecessarily precise answer. It's like, well, as of 9 p.m., it's dude, I don't really need to know.
Well,
I'm not trying to get a rocket there. I'm not NASA.
Well, they do actually move the moon from time to time, I don't know if you've noticed that or not.
It's like, well, based on, the wobble right now from the Earth's tides, we're actually slightly further away. I'm like, okay, sure.
Okay, 405,042. Wait, come back.
Can we get Jaime to ask the same question from Seattle and see if he's closer?
We could. Okay, so I've got my PCalc application here. I'm just going to do a conversion from kilometers to... By the way, that's $5,406.67 US. Length. There we go. Length we go. Kilometers to feet. You want it in feet, Jaime?
No, it was,
Miles. There you go. Oh, 251,000 miles. I had the 200 part right, but 251,000 miles from the Earth to the moon. As of, wait a minute. Oh, it's gone now. The message is gone. As of 9 p.m., whatever time she said. There you go.
He's on the ball.
Yes, sir, Bob. Anyway, TMI. I think we've been talking about, I'm not sure if it was on this show or other shows, we were talking about the amount of money. Oh, yes, it was in the after shows that last week. We were talking about how much money artists actually make. And I happen to have a friend who was involved in making records when they were on LP. Like she started her career when they were still making vinyl. And she went all the way through all the CD generations and iTunes and whatever. And now she's back to actually producing albums again on vinyl. But anyway, it wasn't her, but Lorena McKenna was on CBC talking about her career as, she's self-published for the most part. And she was saying that back in the physical media days, an artist would get 25 cents per song every time it was played or sold or whatever. But now it's like $1 per 1,000 plays, right? So it's come down quite a lot in terms of what the streaming pays artists compared to what they used to make when albums were on vinyl or CD and all that kind of stuff. So there you go.
You can see why they're on tour for sure.
Yeah. Well, tour is where they make the money. So if you're I always say to people on this show and other shows that I'm on, if you are at a show and you want to support the artist, buy the T-shirt or buy the CD from the artist.
Yep.
So, yep.
I had a couple things for our fact check from last time. I tried the Redbox's app, which we had talked about. Jaime mentioned that Redbox, the popular DVD kiosks, have expanded into doing a streaming service. I tried on a bunch of different platforms and a couple different ways. There doesn't seem to be an access here in Canada. I don't know, Jaime, if you're getting the same error message I'm getting now, but it comes up as blocked. I don't know if that's blocked because it's in Canada or if it's just blocked, but yeah.
Did we ever have Redbox rental here?
Yeah, we did have Redbox here.
Oh, really? Okay. Like it was like kiosks that you'd find at the mall, right?
I remember, I think it was like Giant Tiger or something. There was like a discount grocery chain that had some sort of affiliation with them, I think, at one point.
Right, okay. Did we ever have Netflix where you could order? We never had Netflix where you could order.
We did, actually. One of my former colleagues was, I remember him introducing to me the concept of Netflix in the early 2000s because he loaned me some of the stuff that he had gotten in the mail. I remember thinking how novel that was at the time.
Right. Cool. Right.
Yep.
What else you got for us?
And the other one, we had talked about Sonic the Hedgehog as this amazing opening, and Jaime was lauding it justifiably for the fact that they had gone back and spent some dough and done this movie right, and they were reaping the rewards by actually raking in some dough. And we had talked about where that sort of ranked it against openings for or initial openings for movies that were based on video games, and then we were talking about sort of overall video game films and how much money they had made. And so I felt that maybe we should dig into this a little bit. So I looked up the openings and the overall box office grosses for movies based on video game franchises. We talked about Sonic the Hedgehog, which as of this story, it's a story from Forbes.com this week. Very good. Recommend you check it out. That basically does the openings and then it does the overall takes. And Sonic the Hedgehog is now the 13th highest grossing video game based film at $203 million US. And the list goes up from there. So I won't get into all the numbers, but we were trying to fish for what was there. So Need for Speed, Resident Evil, Assassin's Creed, Tomb Raider, Resident Evil, Prince of Persia, Angry Birds, and then we get into the top three. Rampage, of course, was a Dwayne The Rock Johnson film, $428 million US. Pokemon ended up taking home $433 million overall, which is a pretty tidy sum. And Warcraft is the all-time highest one, which I think is one I mentioned last week, $439 million overall, but the large portion of that apparently came from China, because it was a very, very popular film over there. So popular that even though the movie was considered a huge flop elsewhere, they still talked about possibly doing a second one just because it did so well in that market. But yeah, it's when you actually see the list, you realize there actually have been a fair number of adaptations, although they tend to be a little more, a little less sort of the Sonic ilk and a little more of the, real life character based type things.
Interesting that the Lara Croft Tomb Raider, that was the one with Angelina Jolie, did better than Tomb Raider.
Yeah. Not by, well, I think it's tied. I think they're pretty much right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, considering that the eras in which they're made, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I had said on the previous show that Mortal Kombat was my guess, and it's definitely top 10 from the domestic rankings in the United States. It does not make the top 10 in international box office. I guess it came out too early, right? The world wasn't quite as international for movies as it was.
Well, imagine if they can make that movie with the technology we have now, too. Think about, when did Mortal Kombat come out? That was quite a while back, right?
Like 95 to 97, I would guess.
Yeah, so imagine what they'd be able to do with some better technology, right?
Indeed.
Interesting stuff. All right. Now we know. All right, Jaime, you got some stuff for us, right?
Yeah.
Headlines do the headlines.
The Friends cast will make millions of dollars to return for a special reunion on HBO Max. So it won't even be like a Real Z episode. My understanding is just kind of a, hey, I'm Lisa Kudrow. I'm here making $2.5 to $3 million to be here to talk to you. I guess once you're done watching this, you can continue watching Friends here on HBO Max.
But didn't they make like $1 million per episode anyway?
Yeah.
Towards the end there, I think, or like final seasons. Yeah,
they were making multi-millions per episode per person.
Yeah. What do you do with $1 million like per episode? It's like, what? That's such an astronomically high number. I'm sure it all went to their entourage.
That's like European soccer player money.
Yeah, for sure. And what else is next? But I heard that they were having trouble pulling them together, but now it's confirmed they're going to do it.
I mean, I feel like $3 million for like a half hour to an hour of finished tape it would convince me, As long as hey,
$1 million.
Lopez, you want to fly right now to New York and sit down for it'll take us about 3 hours to do an hour's worth of stuff. It's like, sure, for $3 million.
Yeah, so that's $1 million per word, eh?
Yeah.
How you doing?
Yeah, right. How you doing is exactly what I was thinking.
All right, enough of that. What else you got for us, Jaime?
We've got BBC Scotland News, who has a little Twitter video on filming for The Batman, the one with Cedric Diggory, Robert Pattinson, whose name escaped me until I said that.
Isn't he dead? Yeah, Cedric Diggory, yeah.
And they show, him and or possibly more like stunt riders on the motorcycle in the suit. And, it's interesting to see things coming along. I think folks need to always understand that what it looks like through these normal lenses is not what it'll look like through the cinematic finished thing. Like I was watching some of the Ready Room stuff for how they did Star Trek Picard, and it looks awful. It looks like garbage. But then I'm like, well, that same scene looked beautiful. I was like, yeah, once they finish doing their job, it looks great. Yeah. It looks kind of silly here. So I think folks just need to make sure that they look at this through the lens of this will look cool when it's on the big screen.
Yeah, we have to remember to talk about the Borg cube when we get to today's show. So it's kind of weird. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, more stuff that looks cool is Netflix has a trailer for their Transformers War for Cybertron animated show that's coming out.
Yeah,
it's definitely the 1980s style designs of them, so that's great. I'm not sure if the voices are all the same. It certainly sounded pretty good to my ears. They have the sound effects sound pretty recognizable too, so I think they're doing something right here.
Yeah, it looks good, and it's the first part of a trilogy of Netflix Transformers animated pictures. So it's going to be exciting to see what they can do with it. It does seem they are sort of going back more to that true route. It's not Michael Bay. So it'll be good to see what they can do with that franchise with maybe a little more of a retro spin.
Right, cool. So this one from me, it was I think we were talking about the nominees for best special effects or visual effect with respect to the Avengers Endgame and why it kind of got panned. I think it was the point of the story last week. But so I found this post around the same sort of place about a visual effects artist who breaks down the year's nominated best visual effects nominees, right? And so those were Avengers, Star Wars. Who else is here?
Well, the winner was 1917.
1917, yeah, and the Irishman. So what was cool was he kind of broke down the sort of technology behind how they did the different effects. And what was cool about again, like Jonathan made the point that the Endgame was an amazing movie. I watched it again last week, actually, just while I was waiting for something else to happen. But it was a pretty amazing movie visually, because I hadn't seen it since I saw it at midnight showing in Hawaii when I was there last year, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. But so like how they for instance how they did the Hulk and how they put the cameras on who's the guy?
Mark Ruffalo.
I know I was going to say Cedric Diggory there for a minute, but how they sort of mapped his face and how they made the matched the character to him, to make him, so it was actually Mark Ruffalo acting, but they basically blew him up and made him into the Hulk or what is he called, the cool guy now, or very calls himself in the movie. But and as well, then they talked about how they did some of the special effects in Star Wars, and Star Wars was a combination of actual practical effects and visual effects and the part where Rey jumps backwards and stabs the X-Wing fighter, not the X-Wing fighter, the other fighter that
TIE fighter,
flies.
Yeah,
the TIE fighter, modified TIE fighter. But she was actually an actor on a wire, and then the rest of it was all CG, and how they kind of did all that kind of special effects, and how they did the little character guy who does the brain surgery on C-3PO, that kind of stuff. And then 1917. I've seen a few things about 1917. Oh, actually, the one thing was but when they had the battle on the sunken Death Star on, I guess it's Moon of Endor? Yep. Yeah, so with water and those waves crashing, and a lot of it was digital water, but then there was actual real water in it too, sort of, and how they combined all that. 1917 had to make it look like one continuous shot throughout the whole film, so a lot of it was actual practical effects, and there was a whole lot of digital effects to make things look, even more expensive than they were. I don't know if you've seen the scene. I saw something on Twitter where they were showing, there's a scene, I haven't seen the movie yet, but there's a scene where there's a guy running towards the camera as bombs were blowing up around him, and soldiers are running across the field horizontally, and you're following this guy at the same speed as he is. But they also showed another camera showing the filming of that against the actual field where they're in, and you can see that as there's you got the camera crew and sound guys on this pickup truck, which has got the camera on it, and there's bombs exploding all around them. They're driving through explosions as they're filming this actor running through the explosions and blowing up. So it's kind of really impressive in terms of how that whole movie sort of came together. I definitely recommend you watch this video that I'm going to have linked in the show notes. And the last part, of course, was the de-aging of these actors that are in The Irishman. You know, they basically made De Niro and Pesci and Pacino look, 20 years or 30 years younger than they are in real life. So the real actors, are now in their 70s and they're acting these roles out. And yet they used a combination of course, they used computer imaging to do this, but they didn't put any dots on their faces. They just took the actual actors. They used facial recognition because because of those three actors have been in so many movies over their lifetimes. They were able to take images from those other movies and map them, and then use AI to basically make the person look younger than he was. Sort of almost like similar to how they do the deep fake stuff, right? But so they could get the really detailed look of these guys and how their faces would move and stuff like that. And I think on one end you had the Avengers doing the same thing with Mark Ruffalo in a similar sense, and then you have these guys doing it here without the actors having to wear those rigs on their head that they do for the motion capture stuff. So it's kind of really fascinating how they combine actual film effects, practical effects, and things to make these special effects, which are the movies that we all love to see, right? So, and I'm sure Jaime will talk about The Ready Room. We talk about Picard tonight too as well. So that's my headline here.
Very cool.
Next up,
we got the pre-order discounts for Disney Plus in Europe as it launches. So if you are in the United Kingdom, Ireland, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Austria, or Switzerland, notably not the Netherlands, if you subscribe for year in advance, it comes down to $49.99 in pounds or $59.99 in euros. So on a per month basis, instead of £4 or €5, it comes out. It comes out to £4 or €5 a month, as opposed to £5.99 or €6.99. And then you do the math; it's like 70 and 80, I think. So having to be 50 and 60 is a pretty good savings.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Next is I don't know what this means for international folks, but for the United States, Hulu will be the exclusive streaming location for Parasite on April 8th. If you're hoping for it to come to Amazon or Netflix, it ain't being there. Go rent it on iTunes or watch it on Hulu.
No, if it's going to be on Hulu, I would expect it to probably be on something like HBO here for John.
Yeah, Crave maybe. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it can be really weird. Again, we talked about Picard. Obviously, in Canada, it's on Crave and on the CTV Sci-Fi channel, and then in the United States, it's on CBS. But then the rest of the world gets it on Amazon, even though Discovery's on CBS All Access. So you never know how those international rights go, eh?
Yeah, I think in the States they have. In the rest of the world they do Discovery on. I thought they did it on Amazon, or is it Netflix?
Netflix with Picard being on Amazon is probably what you're thinking of.
Oh, okay, right. Cool. Crunchyroll.
Yeah, Crunchyroll. So Crunchyroll is an anime streaming service. You can pay for it if you want to get premium stuff like being able to add to a watch list and be able to view stuff at the same exact time that it arrives in Japan, versus me, who's cheap and says, I'll just wait a week later. So I'm always a week behind on an episode if I'm watching a series. But they're starting to get into the whole like, hey, what if we had our own content instead of being completely dependent upon other studios? So I'm not going to go through these, but they have the first official trailer for the various series that they're looking to put under the Crunchyroll Originals brand. I think it'll be interesting to see how that rolls. No pun intended.
Nice. Cool. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
Chasing
on any streaming service, I guess.
It's on Netflix. They have had the Carmen Sandiego animated series on Netflix, and they're going to do a Bandersnatch style episode where you get to choose your own adventure. That'll be coming up.
Will you need to have your Atlas and or other flags of the world or something out with you while you're doing it?
I think that'd be highly recommended because, I have watched some episodes of this animated series, and they'll be like, oh yeah, these cucumbers are native to Ecuador and they're eaten by capybaras. I'm like, holy smokes, like I would never be able to get that. Like, the show is like way harder than I remember it being as a kid.
Yeah. At what point did the show turn into "Are you smarter than a fourth grader"?
Right. Yeah. For sure. Hey, what's happening with the Star Wars world, John?
Yeah, this was a weird one, and it kind of snuck up on me. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at this trailer. So there's a trailer up on YouTube, and you'll find the link in our show notes. They are doing this sort of huge new push into a new generation of Star Wars storytelling, and it's going to cross across books for adults, books for young adults, books for children, comic books, many different publishing imprints involved in doing this, and it's called Star Wars: The High Republic. The trailer is very interesting in that it basically documents this sort of meeting of the minds they had at looks like Skywalker Ranch, where they brought together all these different writers and they basically put them in a room and had them sort of break down, hey, you got the entire Star Wars universe at your fingertips, what should we do next? And so they basically came up with this sort of golden age of the Republic, I think they said 100 years before the events of Star Wars, and they basically broke down over the course of this sort of conference that they had all these different angles of different characters, of different settings, and the big bad and all this stuff. It sounds really interesting. So I'm curious to see how this sort of all plays out. Honestly, I looked at it and I was like, this sounds fascinating, if not extremely daunting. In typical, Disney fashion, it feels like it's like, and it's getting a theme park, and it's getting this, and it's getting that. I almost felt like, if they had said, like, we're going to put out like one book every 6 months, I'd be like, yeah, I'm totally going to read that. And when they said it's going to have like 16 publishers involved, I was a little overwhelmed, but it does sound really interesting. I mean, they had, at one point in the video, they mentioned that they have the character designer who worked on creating Darth Maul came out and helped them do character designs for some of the characters that they were coming up with and stuff. So it looks really, really interesting. Did you guys have a chance to look at this?
No, I just saw a picture of it, like a screener of it, like a single image.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it looks interesting. It's closer to real time, if we want to call it that, than the Old Republic. Folks might remember the Old Republic stuff being some pretty cool video games. So that would be a notable tie-in here to what this is doing, But there's still plenty of space. There's a lot. I mean, they didn't exactly sit down and explain, like, here's exactly what happened over these thousands of generations of Jedi who did stuff long before the prequel. So it's kind of fun to see that there's new blood, new room for stories to tell.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And you do wonder, obviously, if it is a hit, sort of where it spills from there, too. Are they going to take it and do video games or movies or TV shows? Again, it seems like all this stuff is so interconnected now, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, possibly overkill.
Yeah, possibly overkill. Again, when Disney owns your properties, there's a good chance for overkill. The next thing I saw was this news from Variety about Indiana Jones 5. Now, may have conflicted feelings about the fact that they're doing an Indiana Jones 5 starring 78-year-old Harrison Ford, but they're making it. The story this week was that Steven Spielberg, who of course has directed all of the Indiana Jones films, is not going to be directing the fifth one. James Mangold is reportedly going to take over as the director. He famously directed Logan, which I think we all agree was a quite well-made film.
Yep.
So I don't feel any... obviously Steven Spielberg is one of the great directors of all time, but I don't think that's a huge drop-off. But still an interesting thing to sort of see a passing of the torch there, if only they could think to pass the torch to maybe somebody who isn't a 70-year-old grumbly actor.
Right, cool.
Next thing up, there was a bit of a shake-up at DC Comics last week. Dan DiDio, who was the publisher of DC Comics, has left the organization. They have not said whether that was a voluntary or forced exit, although the rumors online to be believed was that he was asked to go. Apparently he had been pushing for an agenda of continuing to transform and push different ways to sort of expand the characters. There was talk that they were going to do a fifth reboot this summer of the DC Comics brand in the wake of things like Crisis on Infinite Earths and the New 52 and some of the other initiatives they've done over the years to sort of refresh the line of characters and the line of comics, and that was not a hit across the organization and Warner Brothers. So kind of a strange thing. He had been involved with the organization for quite a long time, well over 10 years, and had been responsible for some of their very successful initiatives. So it's a strange thing. I'm not sure what it means for the future over over there. There were some very, very erroneous rumors going on out there that people were sharing over social media that this means that Marvel was going to buy out DC, and it's nonsense. Just please do not forward those things around. They're nonsensical. So Warner Brothers owns these. AT&T owns Warner Brothers. They're making movies out of these things. They're making TV shows out of these things. They're not selling their characters to Disney. Not to mention the fact that the United States government would not allow that because it would create a virtual monopoly over publishing. So don't hold your breath on that one anyways.
Right.
And a little tidbit here, Jurassic World 3. Wait.
Whoa. Jurassic World. I'm going to guess the name.
Oh.
Jurassic World. Will they never learn?
No, it's Endgame. It's Endgame. Haven't you seen the poster? Jurassic World 3, Endgame. So Jurassic World 3. So we had already gotten a little bit of a teaser that this was going to be sort of the Jurassic World Endgame. It's going to be all the actors are coming back from the original Jurassic Park that are I guess, around and alive. So we're going to get Ellie Sattler. We're going to get all the original actors, which is very exciting. Plus, they're bringing all the characters back from the franchise that they've rebuilt here, and they've just announced a name. Jurassic World 3 is going to be called Dominion, which in Canada maybe takes a different meaning because we used to have a grocery store chain called Dominion.
We used to be called the Dominion of Canada.
That's true. We were.
And the Toronto Dominion Bank,
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Indeed. They put up a trailer this week for Walking Dead, The World Beyond. World Beyond is a 2-year limited Walking Dead spin-off series that is apparently set around characters. I think we talked about this one in the past, that they were going to make this. It's set around a generation of kids who grew up in the zombie era, so don't have strong memories of the world before, and them going on sort of their own adventure in this world with, having grown up in it. Again, I've gotten a little disconnected. I think we all have gotten a little disconnected from the Walking Dead world over the last few years. I think we've all sort of felt that it's had its rise and is now sort of headed somewhere else. But the trailer doesn't look bad.
Of course, in 20 years, we'll all be proved wrong when they have these big, giant Walking Dead conventions. And
the fan base is still apparently quite rabid.
Rabid, yes, exactly.
The comic book series is over. I don't know about the ratings and such, but anecdotally, obviously, none of us are keeping up with it. And some of my other friends who are sort of in this community, it doesn't seem like it's nearly as hot as it was 4 or 5 years ago, for sure.
Right. Okay.
And this one made me sad, and I think it'll hit home with Jaime too. Kazuhisa Hashimoto, who was the creator of the Konami Code, died this week at age 61, far too soon. Hashimoto-san created this code, which, Jaime, can you do it off the top of your head?
Is it like no robot should harm any human, or
no? Well, no, but it's something that's ingrained in every video gamer's head, I think.
Yeah. It's the up, down, left, right, BA, start. And sometimes select start depending on what you were trying to modify. Like I think Super C or the NES needed select for some reason, but it's largely been the same just everywhere. Like Konami games go to random websites and somebody's put an Easter egg that does something when you put in the Konami code.
Yep. It is one of the most famous little Easter egg codes ever put into a game. The reason that Hashimoto put it into his game was because he was working on an adaptation for the NES, and he hadn't played it very well, so he couldn't beat it. So he put in the code so that he was going to be able to do it himself, and he just left it in there. And it was so popular.
In every other game?
It was so popular that they started putting it in regularly, and then, as Jaime said, they started making minor tweaks to it, but people would often figure it out, and it became this sort of very ubiquitous video game thing over the years. It started in the early 1980s, and it just sort of carried through, and most gamers who are sort of more than just casual can do that off the top of their head. Up, down, left, right, BA, start. And
my question is it in Ready Player One?
It's a good question. I wonder the
book. I mean,
yeah. So again, well, we have his little obit that was written by the good folks over at Kotaku. Gave him a nice send off this week with that. And the comment board was again a lot of fun. Everybody sort of saying like, without this guy, I wouldn't have finished this game. I wouldn't have finished this game. It made
Yeah.
And people were like, thanks for all the extra lives. Like this guy was he was fundamentally created something that was fundamentally part of a lot of people's video game experiences. So so rest in peace, Hashimoto-san.
All right. Well, this next story, I almost don't want to read it because I haven't seen this movie yet called Knives Out. I don't know if you've seen Knives Out or whatever. You haven't seen it yet, John, right? And Jaime?
No, I haven't seen it.
It's kind of a spoiler, but Rian Johnson, the director of the movie, says or claims that Apple has such an iron fist on the control of their brand that they won't let bad guys own an iPhone in movies. So that might be a spoiler for the movie Knives Out.
Well, it might be a spoiler for any future movies this year. If you see somebody holding an iPhone, you're like, well, they clearly weren't the bad guy.
Yeah. So when we see one show up in Picard, we'll know, right?
Yeah.
Oh, look, it dust off this old ancient relic, on the Borg ship. I almost don't want to read the article, but I'm going to have to now. But
do you believe it? Do you believe that this is true?
Oh, I don't know. Up, down, left, right, start. I don't know. You could be making that shit up for me too, because I don't know. You and Jaime could have like a secret dialogue on behind my back. Anyway, last headline of the headlines, Jaime.
Yeah, this trailer came out just today. This is a reboot, I guess we'll call it, of the Candyman movie by Jordan Peele.
So, where you look in the mirror and say Candyman 3 times?
It's 5 times apparently. I thought it was 3 as well, but this movie trailer claims it's 5 times, and it's a screenplay.
Beetlejuice was 3 times.
Yeah, Beetlejuice was definitely 3 times.
Yeah.
And I guess we have to get into the minutia of like, is it 5 times all time, or is there like a cooldown period? If you say 5 times within a certain time period, what are the rules? Right, we're getting into Gremlins level of minutia. But this is.
Do you remember the was it South Park a couple years ago did Biggie Smalls?
Yeah. So this is executive produced by Jordan Peele. The screenplay has him as one of the writers and is directed by Nia De Costa. Yeah, it comes out in June.
All right.
You have strong feelings about Candyman?
I remember watching it. I don't remember who the actor was in my very fuzzy memory. I'm like, was it the Allstate guy? Because I feel like it was a very similar looking guy. The Allstate commercials guy. It probably wasn't, because that guy would probably be way too old to do it now. It was one of those like second tier for that era, right? Like the top tier was definitely going to be your Freddy Krueger. It was going to be your Jason Voorhees, to some extent, your Chucky, and then sort of that next tier was stuff like Candyman. So we'll see what they end up doing with it.
So this one's going to bug you too. So the actor who played it, his name was Tony Todd. Tony Todd was also famously Kern from Star Trek: The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine.
Oh, Worf's brother. Interesting.
Yeah. So he's got the very, very, very distinctive voice. Very, very distinct voice, Tony Todd.
All right. Well, folks, here it is. Da-da-da. We're here for the Star Trek Picard Season 1, Episode 6 discussion of the show called The Impossible Box. And this week we've got Jonathan taking the reins on the recap.
Yep, let's see how we do. So the episode starts with a dream sequence. It starts inside a dream with a little Japanese girl, so we can determine from that one it's probably Soji. She's a little girl, and she's in a house. There's lightning cracking outside.
She's wearing the necklace too, right?
She is, yeah. Mm-hmm. She's creeping through a house that's kind of dark with the windows. You can see lightning crackling. She's creeping down a hall, and she opens a doorway, and she sees a bunch of orchids. And behind the orchids, a man is tending to something, but she can't figure out what it is. She can't see the person, and she can't see what's beyond the orchids. And she hears a voice say her name, and she wakes up. And sure enough, it's Soji, and she's in bed lying next to Narek, the possibly Romulan spy. And she says, she's been having that same dream. The dream keeps recurring for her. And he sort of says, well, the dreams mean something, and everybody's hiding something, whether they know it or not. And it could be something hiding in your dreams. And the two of them have another one of their sort of,
pillow talks, let's call it.
Well, it's a pillow talk, but it's also the two of them. They're sort of have these little conversations where they seem like they're sword fighting without swords. They're using their words to sort of try and figure each other out. He's obviously aware that she is a synthetic human and that she is not who she says she is. She suspects very much that he is, obviously hiding things from her. And so the two of them sort of trade these little barbs back and forth about who they really are. And she makes a dig at him about, Romulans actually have two names. It was one of the secrets that you're hiding your true name from me. And he says, do you think that your dream is real or something that you're imagining? And suggests that he ask her mother, because we know that we've seen the mother AI, which we already know is not real. And he says, I know that you talk to your mother every night. And she sort of says, how do you know I talk to my mother every night? Are you spying on me? And of course he's spying on her. But we cut back to La Sirena, and Agnes is telling a story to Picard about how Bruce Maddox died. As you recall at the end of last episode, she murdered him, but she's saying, oh no, his injuries that he sustained were too much for him and his heart couldn't take it and he died, which is interesting because I didn't know where they were going to go last week on that one, whether they were going to have it be they come around the corner and say, oh my god, you've killed him, or if that was going to be something that she kept to herself. So clearly it's to herself. They do a little...
Well, you would think in the 23rd century the logs would be able to tell that something was amiss, right?
Well, and the EMH popped in at one point. Wouldn't the EMH be able to pop back on and say, by the way...
Yeah.
But they don't get into that. They instead do a little data dump for us. So they give us a little reminder that they're headed towards the artifact where Soji is, and they give a little recap of the fact that Picard was assimilated and that he's still dealing with the trauma of that, even that this is supposed to be 20 plus years later, and he makes this sort of blanket statement about the Borg. They don't change, they metastasize. It was a great line.
Right. Yeah.
Elnor sort of notices Agnes is upset and says, you are also haunted by something, just like Picard is, by something you'd like to forget. And then the great line from him too, sorry, was I inbutting? Picard is then goes into his hollow produced study again and starts reviewing the files about the Borg and the artifact, trying to learn everything he can. And it starts to recap. And so again, we get a little bit of a sort of recap of where we're at. And he realizes that Hugh is the leader of the Borg Reclamation project. And then we see the image of Locutus and a beautiful visual overlay of the transparent screen showing Locutus's face overlaid with the now older Picard's face. And you can feel, honestly, it gives you chills. It just takes you right back to that moment of the first time you saw Picard assimilated, and very, very well done.
So I'm reading Jaime's notes here in the show notes and trying to figure out where you are in the story.
I'm reading my notes. I'm not reading those notes.
No, I'm just like, he's got Space Wolverine tries Jagged Little Pill, and I'm like, okay, how does that fit in?
I write my
in butt.
Yeah, there's a lot of butt talk in this one. So Rios is the Space Wolverine and Allison Pill is the decoded
okay,
Jagged
so we
Little
haven't
Pill,
got to that part yet. Spoilers.
Which is the album title for Alanis Morissette's album for the 90s.
Right, of course, yes.
That's about right. All right, so we'll get into that one right now. So we get our Picard title sequence, and then we cut back to La Sirena, headed into the Beta Quadrant where the neutral zone used to exist, headed towards the artifact. Rios is playing a little one-man soccer practice, and in walks, as Jaime mentioned, in walks Agnes Girardi. Coincidentally, he's looking buff and she's looking very sexy in her sleepwear. She sort of says, why do you like it out here? Why do you like it in space? Space is cold and empty and wants to kill you. And there had been sort of hints that there was some good chemistry between the two of them, and they share a kiss. And she sort of says, I've never slept with the captain of anything before. And he says, I'd recommend
She says,
it.
I have this amazing superpower.
Yeah, well, first he says, yeah, I've never slept with a captain of anything before, and he says, I recommend it. And then, she's as they're sort of headed towards to his quarters, she says, oh, and then he says, what's the problem? And she says, I have a superpower. I can sense mistakes as I'm making them. And he says, that's not much of a superpower. And so the two of them sort of have this sort of moment where they're sort of both, he's sort of questioning what's going on in her mind. She's questioning whether or not it's a good idea to sleep with him. And, he asks how she's feeling. She says, I'm feeling hollow, helpless, lonely, and afraid. But that doesn't stop them kissing and clearly going off to the other room to have a shag. We cut back to the artifact and to Narek. And do we have a Romulan name for his sister? Or are we still calling her Rizzo?
Yeah, I think it's just Rizzo.
Rizzo?
Yeah, I don't think they've given a name yet.
So the two of them are having, again, these two have lovely scenes where they dance with words and they're fighting over this puzzle box that Narek owns called a Tanjakran. And of course it's a metaphor for Soji. And she's basically saying, like, you're not getting your job done. You got to get this done. How come you're taking so long? And he's talking very wistfully about Soji, and she says, well, you are in love with her. You're in love with it, and really dehumanizes her. But he has a really interesting sort of line in there, and he says, well, what's the purpose of giving us a synthetic person dreams? Why would you do that?
Right.
She says, well, it's a malfunction. And he says, no, it's not. It can't be a malfunction. She says, every day she must come up against the fact that her existence finds evidence the fact that she isn't human, and that she has to create that cognitive dissonance that goes somewhere, and it goes into her unconsciousness, and that's not something that's coincidental, and it's something we can take advantage of. So he says, my plan is to get her to reveal what her dreams are so that I can get inside and work her engrams and get the truth without having her activate and pummel me into the floor like all the rest of the Romulans who activated Daj in previous episodes. Right. And, he sort of says, eyes are on the prize here. It's all about subtlety, and it's about getting the answers to where the synth homeworld are. It's not, this isn't a box you can open by force. This is a box you have to open by using all of the right methods, and he explains that by opening the Tanchakran.
All right, so some real-time follow-up here. Peyton List is the actress who plays Lieutenant Narissa Rizzo. That's all we know her as so far.
So, cut back to La Serena, and and they're headed towards the artifact come hell or high water, but they don't have really right to be there. They know, and they admit that, heading towards there is going to be a breach of the Galactic Treaty, just crossing into Romulan space. And Agnes says, well, hey, let's go undercover as scientists. And Picard says, the second that I walk off this ship, they're going to know. The Romulans will recognize me, the Borg will recognize me, and the game's over. And so he says, instead, let's try the Kawat Malat way, the same way that Elnor was raised. Let's be perfectly open. And so he suggests that they, knowing now that Hugh is the leader of the Borg Independence Project, he wants to try and get Federation diplomatic credentials as an envoy so that they'll have to let him on board so that he can meet with Hugh. And when they say, why would they do this for you? They say, oh, no, not for me. And they pull Raffi out of her quarters, where, of course, she's been getting drunk for several days and clearly high. And she's a mess, obviously, in the wake of being rejected by her son. And she's, she's pretty messed up. But they put her in a chair, they prop her up. She has a hit off of her pipe, and she calls one of her friends at Starfleet, Emmy, who I don't know if they gave her any more detail than that about her. She says, hey, I'm here on this mission with Picard, and we need your help. And she sort of says, I can't help you. Sorry, you can't do that. She's like, well, the bad news is we're 3 hours away from the artifact, and we're just about to cross into Romulan space. She's like, you're going to start a war. You can't do that. And she says, I know. Picard is so Federation. His face is probably still in the damn brochures. And so Emmy basically says, okay, and in the effort to not, start a war in the Romulan space, I'll see what I can do. She says, I'll get you a 24-hour pass, but do me a favor, never call me again.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, yeah, funny scene there. At which point, Raffi sort of piles herself back into her room. We cut back to the artifact. Soji is talking to Narek, and she says, yeah, I had that same same dream again. And she says, I fell asleep talking to my mom again. And Narek says, yeah, I looked up, or he says, I looked up your logs basically, and every single call you have with your mom lasts exactly 70 seconds. You talk to your mom every single night and it lasts 70 seconds every single time. And so there's that whole question now planted in Soji's mind of, well, what does that mean? Like, how is that possible? We cut back to a very emotional scene on La Sirena with Raffi and Rios, where Rios comes to check on her and she's a mess. And she basically confesses the fact that she's got a son. And even though the two of them know each other for years, she had never revealed the fact that she had a son. And she says that they were estranged. And Mitchie mentions that she's going to have this granddaughter on the way, and very tearfully says, "This is nobody I'll ever know." It's a very, 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 very sad scene, and we sort of see the depths that falling out again has reduced Raffi to. Back to the artifact, and Soji is in her quarters, and she's calling her mom, which we know now is an AI, and we now see the full extent of the AI using its programming to put her to sleep. She's trying desperately to fight against it, and even takes out something off her desk, I don't know if it's a pen or something, and stabs herself in the hand to prevent herself from falling asleep, but she can't resist, and the AI knocks her out again. Back to the La Sirena, and that's a little redundant. La Sirena. Anyways, back to La Sirena. Picard has been approved as an envoy, but they've made a point of saying he has to go alone. They're not allowed to land the ship, and that no one can go with them. He has to beam into the coordinates. Agnes is very obviously relieved. She had no interest in going over there. Elnor is mad because he has taken this vow to protect Picard and thinks, he shouldn't be going over there to this risky situation without him. And Picard makes a point of showing the fact that he's got Daj's necklace in his hands, and then we cut to his hands and we see the fact that they're shaking, and that being this close to that artifact is really messing with him. Soji wakes up back on the artifact at her desk, and she's justifiably shaken because she's now realizing that something is very wrong. So she starts digging through her personal effects. She pulls out all her photos, and she pulls out her pictures that she drew on the wall as a child, and she pulls out her toys, and she pulls everything out, and she scans it, and every scan reveals the same answer. The probable age. Yeah, that's right. With her iPhone. Is that a 12? I thought that was an iPhone 67.
Maybe.
She pulls out her iPhone 67, and every single thing says the same thing. Probable age 37 months. Probable age 37 months. And she's freaking out. We cut to Picard. He beams in, and he is very quickly shaken by the fact that he's back on a Borg cube. He starts having these flashbacks. He starts really starting to get overwhelmed by the fear and the emotion of all the things that have gone through his head since he was assimilated. And two Borg come and grab him by the shoulders, and he starts yelling, "Get off me, get off me." And then you hear Q's voice from across the way, and he sort of says, they're trying to keep you from falling. And then Picard sort of snaps to and realizes that these are reclaimed Borg. These are people, and they're trying to keep him from falling off the walkway that has no railings. Q is very glad to see him and comes and gives him a big hug and says, "I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad you're here. I'll help you in any way I can." So very quickly sort of alleviates the fear of, how Q's relationship with Picard is after all this time. He's ecstatic that this person who helped save him from the collective is back in there to help. Soji goes to Narek and talks about her feelings. She says, or he says, well, maybe somebody's planted false memories in you. Maybe that's what it is. And he suggests that there's a Romulan technique, a type of meditation called the Zalmak that could help her unlock what's in her mind. A way of sort of working through just like the puzzle box. Picard's getting the grand tour by Hugh, and he is impressed by the fact that Hugh is doing this reclamation, the fact that he's undoing assimilation, and he says on a massive scale that they're being healed. And he sort of starts to reverse course from where we started this episode, where he sees that, these people are victims, that they're not monsters, that they can be saved in the way that he was saved, that it's not all Borg. It is truly an illness. It is a plague. It is not about the people. And Hugh says, I'm glad you saw this. I think having a Picard on my side to advocate for free Borg will be a very powerful thing. So I think that'll come back around. Mm-hmm. We cut to Raffi and Rios. Rios comes in and pours her a cup of coffee and tries to get her sort of back on her feet after her bender. And he says, you owe me 2 strips of latinum. She says, well, what do I owe you 2 strips of latinum for? He says, Soji's still alive. And Raffi, always the one who's conspiracy minded, says, they have to have figured out by now. If the Romulans are, half as smart as we think they have to have figured out that she's not who she says she is. Why haven't they busted her yet? What do they want? Mm-hmm. And so again,
not just that, but what did whoever send her to the Borg ship for?
Well, yeah.
Why did they send her there?
Yeah, they mentioned that very early on in the episode. Why? Yeah, Maddox had said that he'd sent them there to find the answers, but it's again her ability to sort of see the hidden truth in these things. We cut back to the artifact, and Narek has now taken Soji to this very special room after dressing down the guard, and says, this is the Zalmak room. And in order to earn her trust, he tells her supposedly his real name, Royan. He says, what we're going to do is we're going to sort of, we're going to probe your dreams. We're going to have you walk this pathway. And as you go through it, you're going to unlock more as you go, as you follow this pathway. And when we get to the middle, we're going to find the truth. So she goes through the same dream sequence you saw at the beginning of the episode. She starts to recap it. She's looking for more details. She says she remembers her stuffed animal, Squoogy's fur. She remembers that she's sweating. She remembers the lightning. She said she can't see out the window properly. And then when she comes into the room where her father is, she says she can't see past the orchid. She can't figure out what's there. And she hears the voice calling her name, and she pops back out, but Narek keeps pushing her to try and find the truth. Back to Hugh and Picard. They are trying to figure out now, okay, we've got to find Soji. Hugh takes Picard to Soji's room where they find the mess that she's left when she was scanning all of her documents. Her pictures are all over the desk, and they figure that she's starting to come unraveled. Picard says she must be close to figuring out the truth. They do a scan to try and find out where her location is, and the location comes back and says that she's not on the cube. And they say, well, that's impossible. So it must be being concealed. So then we realize that things are not looking good for Soji in that locked room with Narek. We finally get back to the dream, and Soji is being pushed by Narek. Find the next thing. He says, can you see your father? Can you see your father? Look past the orchids. And she looks past. She looks behind, and she sees her father's face, but there is no face. It's blurry. Yeah, there's nothing there. And she looks past the other side of the orchids, and she sees on the table herself as a full-sized wooden doll. And Narek quickly says, okay, now look up through the skylight and tell me what you see. And she says, I see 2 red moons, dark as blood, and lightning, so much lightning. And then snaps back to the room and is looking at him and says, why was I on a workbench? Why was I there? What does that mean? And he kisses her very tenderly and says, it means you're not real. You never were. And then he says goodbye, and he drops the puzzle box that we saw earlier, and he walks out the door and locks behind him. And he looks genuinely pained in that moment. He looks like he's, maybe there was a lot of truth to what Rizzo said earlier, that maybe he really was in love. And as the puzzle box unlocks as it did before, we see this red gas start to leak out and start suffocating her. She's choking. Clearly it's something toxic meant to kill her in this moment. He's got the answers he needs, so it's time to get rid of her. But of course, all it does is tick her off, and all that does is activate her. So she reaches down and starts hitting the floor and punches a hole through the wood floor, and then below that through the metal and down, and jumps down through the floor. Hugh all of a sudden recognizes that she's reappeared on the indicators that he's got, saying she's now between 2 floors, and it can't be right because she's moving unnaturally fast. And Picard knows that exactly what that means. That means she has been activated. There's a little throwaway moment in there that I thought was interesting, and I'll digress into that for 1 second. As Picard and Hugh are walking down the hallway and they're trying to get to where Soji is, one of the reclaimed Borg walking by says, "Locutus?" as Picard walks by, which was funny. It wasn't like they recognized him as Jean-Luc. They recognized him as Locutus as part of the collective. I thought that was an interesting little throwaway line, but interesting in that moment.
Well, did you also catch the part where they said that the Queen is Romulan? Romulan.
No, I didn't see it.
Yeah, they said our queen is a Romulan.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Now that you mention it, you're right. So of course, Soji, fully activated, busting through 2 floors, has got the Romulans freaking out. Narek starts calling in the reinforcements. Soji crashes through the ceiling just in front of where Picard and Hugh are, and Picard knows just what to do. So he reaches into his pocket and he pulls out the necklace and he says, I'm here to help you. My name is Jean-Luc Picard. I'm here to help you. I'm here to rescue you. And she says, aren't you a little short for an admiral?
Short for a stormtrooper.
Yeah. And when she sees the necklace, she knows that, this person is, legit. He says, let me help you. And the Romulans are on the way. Hugh is saying, you got to get him out of here. So Picard asks Hugh for help. Hugh takes them into this sort of hidden area inside, which he calls the Queen Cell. And it's an interesting note. They say it's a place they both remember, even though neither of them have ever been there before.
Yeah.
And inside is this, what he calls a trajector, which is technology that was assimilated by the Borg from the Sicarians. And it has a 40,000 light year range, and it basically creates a doorway. And so because they can't get off the ship, Picard says, okay, let's go. He calls the La Serena, and he says, okay, we can't get out this way. You guys go. We'll rendezvous at Repente. And
maybe, yeah.
At which point they're like, okay, fine, we'll meet you there. Hey, wait a minute, where's Elnor? And cut to back to the artifact, and the Romulans are closing in. They're coming towards the door. 3 of them are coming at them, and they're just about to take down Hugh, Picard, and Soji. And Elnor just comes in like a
ninja,
rogue ninja, and starts slashing the heads off of them. And yet another slice first, ask questions later moment for Elnor. Elnor, I told you to stay on the ship. Yes, I didn't listen. Great line. The kid gets all the great lines. They decide they're going to open the door, but in opening the door, Hugh sort of says, this is going to take a few minutes. And Elnor says, you guys go, I'll stay here, I'll defend your retreat. They hesitate because they don't want to leave him behind, but they realize that he's right. They do need the time. So Soji and Picard jump through this portal, and Hugh and Elnor are left behind. Hugh says it's going to take a few minutes to shut down and then re-hide the room. And he says, can you buy us a few minutes? And Elnor says, yes, I can buy you a couple of minutes. And then the door closes behind them, and you hear him say, please, my friends, choose to live.
I love that line. That's like my new catchphrase now.
But again, another great episode. Like, really good pace, good characters. I mean, I thought this was great. What do you guys think?
Yeah, for sure.
I was digging it. Some of the notes, really good recap, by the way. Some notes that I captured. Is that early in the episode when they're recapping Picard's time in the collective, he nearly goes full Captain Ahab. Like, clearly it reminded me of First Contact, right? Where he, he gets called out as being like Captain Ahab, and the Borg were the ones who had wounded him, and he was going to get his revenge. And he obviously still feels it, right? And you can see the trauma there when he envisions Borg drones grabbing him versus XBs who have been liberated and are just trying to keep him from falling off the catwalk.
Yeah, some beautiful performance by Patrick Stewart. Just it's so much subtlety in his face and his eyes.
Another note I have here is Nepenthe. Just like a lot of these planets, they all have some sort of meaning in the real world. This one I had to look up because I didn't know, but it's a drug described in Homer's Odyssey as banishing grief or trouble from a person's mind.
Interesting.
I feel like that will give us a hint for the next place they're going to. The Sicarians tickled the back of my brain. I was like, I've never heard that before, and so I went to go look it up.
I'm just checking right now. If you remember the episode called All Our Yesterdays on the original series, where this planet is about to be destroyed by supernova, and they beam down to try and rescue people, and they meet this old dude whose name is. Hang on, I'll tell you what his name is. Wait for IMDb to load. Mr. Atos, and they go, and Spock and McCoy go back and they meet Marriott Hartley in prehistoric time in the planet, and Spock reverts back and falls in love with her, and Kirk ends up going somewhere else. But he ends up going back to a time when they were burning witches, and anyway, so I'm thinking that arch, because it reminded me of the arch in that episode where they jump through and they go back in time. And just looking to see what the name of the planet was, because it could be that one or the one with who was the English actress who was in Dynasty?
Elizabeth Taylor? No, it's
Joan
the other
Collins?
one. Joan Collins. That's what it is. Yes.
So I actually did look this up to see who the Sicarians are. And the reason it came to mind is there was a Voyager episode where these people had these archways that they could use to just sort of instantly be anywhere else without space travel. And they were looking to trade that technology or usage of it for stories because they love stories. So they want basically like a computer database dump of all the literature and media that Voyager had. And the way that Hugh says it, that the Borg assimilated Sicarians and not assimilated the Sicarians, it leaves people wondering about the ambiguity there. Like, are the Sicarians still around and they assimilated like some of the engineers who knew how that worked?
Or did they assimilate the whole damn race?
Yeah, because they were in the Delta Quadrant, so it's a dangerous place to live.
Mm-hmm. Right. The thing I didn't found odd today about the cube itself, because I mean we've seen cubes in other episodes, and and Seven had that sort of like station that Harry set up for her to regenerate, right? Mm-hmm. But the way the cube, the walls kind of moved and stuff like that, I found that was a little not necessary. But I guess they were trying to make it seem like it wasn't really a computerized or like a styrofoam set, like the original series.
That was just the stuff you couldn't see because we had SD televisions.
Yeah, it's true.
You couldn't see it all happening in the background.
Well, it's like I said the other day when that one woman, Atlanta Troyes, threw the knife at William Shatner. You could see that it was suspended on a fishing line, right? Back in those days, we wouldn't have been able to see that because it would have been all blurry and things, right? But I like the styrofoam rocks that they had in the original series and stuff like that, right? So
my all-time favorite one of those I actually just rewatched not long ago, To Kill a Mockingbird, classic.
Oh yeah,
beautiful
the ham
film.
Right?
No, you know what it is? It's the scene where Atticus, they call Atticus home because there's a rabid dog in the streets of Mako.
Yeah.
Oh, that scene kills me every time. This is long before they had to have the SPCA on scene during shoots. Yeah. So it's supposed to be this rabid dog has come through town, and Atticus is the best shot in town, and they have to call him so that he can take this dog out. And in lieu of special effects in the 1960s, what they did was clearly tie a rope to this damn dog's leg and just pull it out from under him in the middle of the scene so that he falls down when they shoot him. Yeah. And it is just the most awkwardly brutal thing to see this poor dog have its legs just yoinked out from under it, because that was a special effect. It wasn't like they taught the dog to fall down on command. They just pulled its legs out from under him.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
The other note I have here, since those of you listening to the show can't see this, but I write my notes in memes roughly.
It really is delightful, folks. You're missing out.
And for me, I was thinking about things from Soji's perspective, in that it really feels like for her, this is like an Alice in Wonderland type story where she has gone down the rabbit hole and through the looking glass, quite literally in both of these, right? She went through the hole that she tore up in the room to get escape from the red radiation gas. And she went through the looking glass with Picard, the archway that will take them to Nepenthe.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the like nonsensical parts of like seeing yourself as a wooden doll and the weird cognitive dissonance that comes from that.
Yeah. There was an artist who used to make sculptures out of large wooden dolls like that, that's what it reminded me of. Except for the fact they made it look like faux wood,
Yeah, it was interesting because her face is obviously very clear, and I guess we're supposed to figure out whether she was witnessing the creation of Daj, or if she was supposed to be seeing another version of herself. But the texture that it takes on, sort of from the neck down, is very interesting, haunting.
Yeah. Well, she at one point, I don't know if you remember, in her studio, she looks over and she sees an artist's mannequin, like the wooden mannequins that artists use to do poses. So in her room, she looks over and sees a mannequin, and then later on, she sees herself as the mannequin. Yeah. In the dream.
Yeah. Are you guys surprised at the pacing of this episode, that it came together sort of from we're headed there to we're out the door with Soji all in one episode?
Yeah, one episode. Yeah, I found that a little. I thought that was interesting and odd, but I mean, it's typical of Star Trek. They kind of have a problem and they solve it in 40 minutes, right? But with this overarching arc, because they did the same thing when you picked up Elnor. That was a single episode. He developed a bit with Raffi and Alison Pill. And Maddox, they kind of dispatched him in one episode last week, right? Yep. So it's in keeping. They're not going to drag things out and have a tune in next week, same bat time. time, same bat channel.
Well, the nice thing is, again, you know that this is a sort of a season, but it's also sort of an event season. It is all interconnected. You can't watch these episodes without watching the previous one. It just doesn't. It isn't built to live like that. I would like to give the award for the line of the week to our own Jaime Lopez for Total Makeover. Total Makeover Borg edition. I think someone's got to make that. Where they're healing the Borg and they're like, I'm beautiful.
Oh, Total Makeover. Yeah. Right. Cruel and inhuman.
Yep. Yeah, good episode. Again, this
I don't get the reference here. Narek takes Soji to a booth and Haran Yan can cook.
So Yan can cook.
Yan can cook.
Was a cooking show.
Walk with Yan.
Pre-cooking channel, pre-Food Network.
Yeah.
From now on, we're not going to do a recap, folks. We're just going to have Jaime read this whole thing in his weird meme messages. It'll be 10 times more entertaining.
The Timba, his arms wide, is just everything is just memes like that Darmok episode.
Yeah, that's right. Shaka when the walls fell.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool.
Want to dip into some Doctor Who?
Yeah, I'm all caught up. One episode left this Sunday is the final?
Left.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. And they're really building to something. This is getting crazy.
Well, they do this every year. They have these major battles with, a couple of years ago it was the Dalek. This year it's the Cybermen. Mm-hmm. And actually the end of Capaldi's series with Bill was Cybermen as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. But this is interesting in that it's sort of Cybermen, but it also ties in spoilers that brings back to the beginning of the season. The Master is back as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of bringing things full circle on the season, and excluding the Save the Whales episodes in the middle there, it seems like it's been sort of the first 2 episodes and the last 3 episodes are all sort of intertwined. So we get 5 standalones and 5 sort of intertwined overarching pieces.
Well, they've done that with seasons. There was the season I talked about with Bill and the Cybermen was also started with Missy being imprisoned by Peter Capaldi's Doctor Who, right? Mm-hmm. That kind of went all the way through the season, and then ended with Bill and the Doctor and the Master sort of helping each other escape, and then and we lose Bill, right?
Yeah.
At the end. Well, sorry, Jaime, just spoiled it for you. But anyway, and 2-3 years ago before that, they had the Dalek coming back. The massive attack on Earth, and they had like hundreds of Dalek. They had learned how to fly, which was the new thing, right? By the way, so it's interesting because the Cybermen, they started out as guys in tinfoil suits, kind of thing, and they kind of evolved over the years. And the Cybermen were always sort of like robotic, just kind of walked around and clunked around and walked really slowly and menacingly, that kind of stuff, right? But in this episode, their heads fly as drones. I mean, that's completely new. And the whole sort of Cybermen flying now. I mean, it's like now they're as terrifying as flying monkeys, kind of thing. It's kind of like they're taking it up a notch. Like I didn't mind when the Dalek kind of just drove around like really slow go-karts and stuff like that, or R2D2's kind of thing. It's like R2D2 flying in what episode was that?
It's episode 3, I think, is where he's got. He does it in a few of the. I think he does it in episode 2, but episode 3 is the one where it's the slapsticky thing where he like sprays the oil and then ignites the oil, and that's episode 3.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that was right after Chicken Run, right? It was sort of the Chicken Run section in the middle of Star Wars, which makes no sense whatsoever with the refinery, right?
Yeah.
No, it's 2 is a refinery one, right? So it was kind of weird the way they kind of like have this new sort of way that they come into play here. I think they're kind of telegraphing the whole story of who this one lone Cyberman guy is, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's kind of obvious, but you'll have some emotional breakdown in the next episode, and the Doctor will do some sonic psychiatry on him and get him to admit that he's mad at his dad or something like that, right? So
yeah, it's funny because again, it is sort of it's very sort of grand and epic on its scale. Doctor Who does that sometimes. They sort of splash out and do these sort of multi-part ones. It did feel grand in that way, and again, it certainly does whet the appetite for the end of the series. Anyways, it'll be interesting to see if they can pay that off. Though they have sort of spent multiple episodes sort of building this up, and then there is the sort of grand reveal at the end of this episode. The Master is returned. I wonder how they're going to pay it all off, and if it will come together in a satisfying way. Jaime, as our noob, what did you make of all this?
Yeah, so I ended up catching up on the most recent 3 episodes, and the episode 9 was the one that really held my attention the most, I found. The setting with the Mary Shelley crew was pretty well done. I don't have any real good background on the Cybermen. They seem to me, from this episode to be, and previous episodes, as being kind of like a cross between like the Borg and the Kalon, especially with the flying heads sort of thing from Identity Part 2 and the Orville. Yep. So I think I more or less got what was going on. It was kind of interesting that they had split this episode with the the little kid who's adopted and becomes a policeman and eventually ends up retiring. So the dual
and getting removed at the end too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I mean the Borg analogy is a great observation too, because that's essentially what it is. James Corden was once on Doctor Who as one of the sort of people, one of the victims, as it were, right? And he ended up being a Cyberman for a bit. I think it was on the Capaldi series. Right? Yep. But I mean it is funny that you mentioned that, because that's exactly what the Cybermen are. They basically catch you and turn you into a Cyberman. Put you inside a suit and make you do weird things. Right?
Although it's funny because there's sort of a mixed metaphor in that one too, because at some point they sort of change from you'll become one of us to we want you eradicated too. They sort of become their own race at a certain point, and it's less about assimilation, more about genocide.
Yeah.
Because in this one, they're very clearly are like, it's enough out of all of you, and they're there to kill all the humans, not take them hostage or turn them into anything.
I was going to say, the Doctor had mentioned that to the companions that the Cybermen eventually wipe out all the humans. Is that new information, or is that like a recap of stuff that's in the mythology?
It's sort of in the mythology, I think.
Yeah, I can't recall. I must admit it does start to get a little convoluted in my mind. Maybe we can do that for our fact check for next week. We'll do a deep dive on Cybermen.
Yeah, I mean, as much as they jumped around in time, in Doctor Who in general, they used, in the early season, they used to do less of that, right? It would be sort of like one week to the next kind of thing, and I guess they didn't really have the intelligent kind of writers that they have now, with the ability to sort of play with space and time, and what happens to this timeline if you go change things, right? Because Gallifrey comes up a lot in the show, in this the second half of Doctor Who series, right? It was kind of just mentioned in the first bunch of Doctors, but now it's since David Tennant and his kind, you see Gallifrey more often. You see paintings. They've been to Gallifrey a number of times, and of course it's at different phases in its existence, right? So and Earth is different. I mean, sometimes some of the plot lines in Earth, they'll go and they'll some alien is taking over. Or there's one point where the aliens take over the whole British Parliament, and the Doctor saves the day, and so they play with the timeline there. There's a couple of series where they go to the Oval Office and Nixon is the president, and they help out Nixon in some cases, which is kind of odd, in retrospect. So I suppose in 10 years they'll be helping Trump out, But,
So from a newbie standpoint, is there some sort of stated limitation on the time travel aspect? Like, where I'm going with this is, how come they don't use the Bill and Ted model of solving problems? Like, oh crap, we messed it up. All right, the next time we come through here, we have to remind ourselves to do this thing, right? And
it's kind of Rick and Morty too. Yeah. She does say, and doctors over time have said repeatedly, that some points in time are fixed, and that you can't rework time in that sort of area, that there are some things that are immovable.
There was one episode with Matt Smith and Amy Pond, and I think Alex Kingston, what did she play? I forget her name now. River Song.
Yeah.
Where they're in a museum and some object gets left on the stairs, or they see some object left on the stairs, and then when they come around again in the future, that object becomes important to them. So they have done that in the past, where they kind of like, oh, I left that there for myself to help. I knew I would need that later, kind of thing.
Well, and so I'll put a spoiler out there, but also ask Jaime, do you intend to go back and watch more Doctor Who series? Because there's a really good twist about time play at one point between when characters meet at different points in time. When one person meets you isn't necessarily when you met them, based on who you were at different times and at what point in their life you first appeared. It ties into the whole River Song storyline.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's just so much Doctor Who media that I think it's fair, right? It's kind of like, spoilers for Voyager that came out in the 90s sort of thing. Like, it's more than 10 years old at this point. I think spoilers are fair game,
Yeah.
Well, is Doctor Who accessible like on any of the platforms?
Like older ones? Okay. I haven't checked. I haven't really checked.
The BBC used to always like to buy the box sets for Doctor Who was always really expensive.
It continues to be quite expensive. I think here in Canada, I think Crave is actually, where you can watch Doctor Who.
Really?
Yeah. I seem to recall seeing that they had the previous 11 series from the reboot available there. It was on Netflix previously because, again, when you had sort of turned me on to that somewhere in the series 2-3 era, that's where I went back and started. I think I watched maybe the first 5 or 4 new series in that all in a row on Netflix, but it's no longer available there.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't seem.
But as you say, it's prohibitively expensive to buy the box sets. They're really quite for like 10 episodes is $70 or something fool like that here in Canada.
Here in the US, I just used the Roku to search and to say across all different channels that across that platform what's available, and the only thing that's available is on what channel is this? BFI Player Classics from 1965, Doctor Who and the Daleks. Which
that's a movie.
I guess I could.
Because they had done some movies that are disconnected from the actual show, right? That Doctor Who and the Daleks stars Peter Cushing. Grand Moff Tarkin from Star Wars.
Oh,
he plays a doctor. He plays a doctor in that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Victor von Frankenstein.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our watch list and get this puppy to bed. You're up first.
Yeah, mine is related to The Witcher, which I finished up as a series on Netflix. Finished up season 1. And if folks remember, I have brought up the Real Lawyer, the Legal Eagle series on YouTube. And on this one, he covers The Witcher's law of surprise and how it would work in legal terms, and whether it would be legal and how you can change aspects of it to make it legal or not. So I thought that was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I tried to watch the first 10 minutes of The Witcher, and I just couldn't get through it.
I would say, as somebody who sat through all 10 episodes, it does a real heavy exposition dump in the first 2 episodes.
Oh yeah,
and then it picks up in the 3rd episode.
Right.
So if you're gonna, if you're interested at all, I'd say power through those first couple and then see the 3rd. And if by the 3rd you're like, then it's not going to be for you.
Right.
And that's okay. There's plenty of other media.
So last week you guys were talking about Better Call Saul. So I put it down as all of us wanting to watch Better Call Saul. But I don't know if you know this or not, John, but they showed the premiere episode on Sunday night. It's normally on Mondays. So they had like a 2-night premiere. So I happened to catch I only caught it halfway through on Sunday night.
Yeah.
But then they replayed it again before the premiere time. I think it's 9:00 at night on Mondays.
Yep.
They played it at 8 and then at 9. So I don't know if you saw both episodes.
Yeah, I caught it on the On Demand because AMC is actually pretty good through Rogers On Demand.
I didn't know it was on demand. Okay.
It is. Yeah, that's actually somewhat common practice with AMC. They do 2-night premieres often. They'll drop you episode 1 on one night and episode 2. I know Jason Segel from How I Met Your Mother and Forgetting Sarah Marshall has a new AMC series starting this week.
Look, it's on my watch list called Dispatches from Everywhere.
Yeah, so you can talk about that one, but I know that's a 2-night premiere as well. That's premieres on Sunday night and the first episode, and then episode 2's on so it's after The Walking Dead on Sunday and then after Better Call Saul on Monday. So they're doing the same thing with that one. So you get sort of 2 episodes in 2 days, and then it's I think 8 more episodes after that over the next 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And another show that I saw, and I can't remember which channel it's going to be on. It's called Devs, and it's about app development. Jaime,
I have heard the title. It actually is about developers.
Yeah, something to do with it. I just caught it. Yeah, I just caught a preview when I was watching something else the other day, and I thought, I better go set that one up in the PVR. I think it's coming out in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's something we'll definitely have to watch. You're up, John.
All right, I have a couple things. So I watched this new show premiered on Netflix last week. It's called I Am Not Okay With This. It's based on a graphic novel, which is right in my wheelhouse. A very dark graphic novel called, same name, by a creator named Charles Forsman. Charles Forsman has previously had his work adapted by Netflix from his work, which all sort of follows this very dark, edgy graphic novels. Previously, he did one called End of the F blank 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 ING World. This is a family podcast, so I won't say what it is, but which was a fantastic show on Netflix. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to watch that one. Again, very dark. That one is about End of the Effing World is about a pair of young teenagers who decide to basically run away from home and go on a crime spree. And his plan is to murder her, and her plan is to commit as many crimes as she can along the way. It's pretty grim and dark, but it's really interesting television. I Am Not Okay With This is a new series, and it focuses around a young woman named Sid who's 17 years old. She's living in a crummy town in rural Pennsylvania, and in typical sort of teen angsty kind of stuff is having all the usual problems with high school and relationships and friendships and all these different things. But in the midst of this, she also is starting to realize that she may be more than just an average human being. I watched the first 4 episodes last night, and it's only 7 episodes, and there are 20 to 25 minutes apiece. So it's essentially a movie. It's about a 2-hour and 15-minute movie when you put them all together. Excellent performance by the star Sophia Lillis, who was in the remake of It, and it's definitely worth checking out. It's sort of in the wheelhouse of that sort of bridge between teen angst, teen drama, and sort of it's got some black comedy elements, but it's also it's got some very blackness to it as well, and in that sort of same coming of age, more than meets the eye to this young woman kind of storyline. And the next thing I got was I just saw this earlier tonight, and I flagged it in here. So apparently Bong Joon-ho's storyboards that he used to lay out how they were going to film Parasite is going to be made into a graphic novel. So for those of us who are sort of in that wheelhouse, there's going to be a different way to take in that. And it's always, I find that to be fascinating. I have a few different books that have shown, famously the ones for Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Matrix ones are amazing. It's really interesting to see how somebody envisions those things and how they're brought to life from there. So it'll be interesting to see how.
So you've seen the movie now?
I have not.
Oh, okay.
But apparently it's coming out in April on
IMAX, I think you said, right?
Well, it's got on IMAX now, I think, but it's coming out apparently on Hulu in the United States. So hopefully that means it's coming here in the not distant future. So
right.
I'll get there. Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's fun to see it in the theater, large as life, because you see more of what's on the screen. But it'll be entertaining no matter how you see it, for sure. All right. Well, I guess that's it for another week. So, hey, Jonathan, if people want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as @JPKNews.
All right. And Jaime, if people want to get in touch with you,
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithAHair.
All right. And you'll find me on Twitter as well. My name is Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA. On the Twitcher machine is where you'll find me. So until next time, we'll see you in the future.
Bye.
Beam up, Scotty. Beam us up, Scotty.
You've been listening to the SpockCast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the SpockCast website at SpockCast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at SpockCast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpockCast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/SpockCast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, SpockCast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
We have to do the start date again this year.
Oh, yeah.
Mind you, but I don't know what stardate for Picard's in.
Well,
in the future.
yeah, I guess we established if it's... Yeah, we don't know what the actual date is. We know what the year is.
Well, they kind of blew that whole thing with the last season of Discovery, right? Because now we have no idea where we are.
I mean, it's in the 30th or 31st century, depending where they're drawing the line on things.
Right. Yep.
They go like 900-ish years in the future, so depending how literal they were with that. And Picard is in 2399, at the tail end of the 24th, almost the 25th century, like Buck Rogers, right? In the 25th century.
Yep.
Yeah. It's amazing that guy you mentioned earlier died at 61 years old.
I know. That's far
pretty
too
young.
soon.
It's a shame.
Pretty young.
Yeah. Did it say how he died?
I don't think the story says.
Oh, look, it's up, down, left, right, B, A, start.
Yeah.
Huh. Does that only work on Konami games?
No, it's been adopted for a lot of different things over the years. Konami is famous for it, but it's sort of become a trope. And as Jaime mentioned earlier, it's sort of spun from there too. It's other things have done it. The story referenced at the bottom of the Kotaku story, they mentioned the Bank of Canada used it at one point. I do not get the reference. I don't know what that means. I meant to look that up, but I haven't. It's been a bit of a busy week for me. So
right too.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're ever bored, Tim, just try it on some random site that you suspect might, have a gaming culture associated with it.
Oh yeah,
and there's a pretty good chance you'll get some sort of Easter egg.
Nice.
Yeah, it is really funny how many different things it has seeped into, and really, yeah, like I say, it's almost become an in joke in its way. But I do love the bluntness of it too, where he's just like, I couldn't beat our own game, so I put in a cheat code.
yeah. That's not uncommon in development to do stuff like that.
Yep.
Level selects and music.
Yeah, this guy's basically the grandfather of the cheat code, right? Built it right in.
Yeah.
He said the reason I made this code so easy too is because I was the one who's going to be using it, so I made sure it was something I would remember.
Yeah. I did that once. I was working on an app once where every time I went to run the app, you have to log in. So I said, this is annoying. So I put in like a remember me thing that would remember your username and password so that every time I just went to run the app, it would automatically log me in. And then we turned that into a feature, right? So
hang on, I just found this one. I'm going to paste this in next to the note for that one. So here, you guys can check this out.
What could that be? He wondered.
10 awesome uses of the Konami code. This is a story from 2017 from Kotaku, where they show you examples of where it's been used in modern terms. So they used it in the very popular online game Rocket League, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which was, of course, a very much meta video game experience, movie, everything. And then, Gradius. There's the Bank of Canada one. There's no rule that says the Konami code needs to be used in a game. Earlier this month, the Bank of Canada revealed the new $10 banknote. Inputting the Konami code adds an extra dash of bizarre patriotism and summoning a horde of confetti and playing the boisterous Canadian anthem.
Really?
There you go. So, nerds are everywhere, man. It says you can use it in pretty much every Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles beat-em-up game that they ever created. Assassin's Creed 3, and of course Contra. That's the very famous one that, honestly, I don't know how people finish that game without that code. And of course, it was, they don't mention it in here, but Metal Gear, right? Metal Gear used it.
I'll have to try and work that into some of my games. Yep. For science.
You monster.
Yep. Anyway, I'm ready to pack it in.
Yep, me too. Busy day.
All right.
Talk to you guys later.
All right. See you next week, guys.
Bye.
Bye.